Here's the 3-1 pitch. There's a drive, deep left field. Will it stay fair? It is fair. It is gone. Braxton Fulford, a walk-off 2-run homer, and the Albuquerque Isotopes are victorious 5-4.
I love that.
I feel like every time you apply for a job and you don't get it, it's that way. So what I say is I give myself 24 hours to feel sorry for myself. And then I go, okay, what's next? I love what I get to do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, again, if you would have asked me at age 12, what do you want to do? Like, this is what I'm doing. I go to a baseball game and I talk for 3 hours in front of a microphone about it. So yes, to answer your question, yes, like love it.
Hello and welcome to Good Job New Mexico. I'm your host, Stacey Johnston, and today I am joined by the Office of New Americans Director Leonardo Castaneda. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
So, do you love baseball?
I do love baseball. I love San Diego baseball and Albuquerque baseball specifically.
Can you remember going to your very first baseball game?
I actually can't.
Yeah, I can't either.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. No, I don't remember. I remember it was San Diego's Petco Park, great stadium, but I don't remember the first game.
But do you have a tradition when you go to a baseball game? Like, I feel like I have to have a hot dog when I go to a baseball game.
A hot dog is great. My tradition is by the 8th inning, everyone wants to go home. And my tradition is to say, let's just do like one more half inning and then just keep dragging that out until the end of the 9th inning, even if it's like 16-2 and it's 40 degrees and it's freezing and there's no point in watching the game. It's like one more half inning and then we'll leave.
Yeah.
One more batter and then we'll leave. And
then the person with you goes, well, you already said that 10 times.
Yes. You bought the ticket, you're there, it's about the experience. The players don't get to go home early.
Yeah.
So why should you?
For sure. They're out there doing their job. Yeah. And plus, don't you want to be there for the 7th inning stretch? That's fun.
It's the most important part of the game.
Well, today we are talking to Josh Suchon, who is the play-by-play announcer for the Albuquerque Isotopes. And his story is incredible of determination, going after exactly what he wanted, and the type of focus that he was talking about, and just the determination is wild to me. And I loved hearing all about it.
So impressive. It really goes to show that you can have these jobs that seem so unattainable that you watch people on TV doing, and you can get there. You can do it. It just takes a lot of passion, a lot of drive. It takes a plan, and it takes an ability to bounce back when you have setbacks. Because I think that's something that was really interesting that he said was like not just the success and the forward movement, but the setbacks and how that set him up for his next success and his next step towards his goal of being an announcer for a baseball team.
Yeah, amazing. I loved everything that he did. And it seems like, I love that his family kept asking, what's the plan B or whatever? And he's like, there is no plan B. I mean, he just like knew from the young age, and the fact that he worked on it and honed in his skills, and he's still doing it today, it just makes him an amazing announcer.
Yeah, he's covered baseball from the outside as a reporter. He played baseball. He told us as a kid. He has built his life around it and his work around it. And it shows in the way that, you know, when he was telling us about how he came up with his home run call. And it shows how it's built not just from his professional experience, his understanding of the game and the situation and what it calls for, but also his history growing up as a baseball fan and the announcers that he looked up to and that he admired, and how it all culminated into that moment and how that's carried on in his career.
So if you are interested in also doing this, please take a good listen to this one. He has amazing advice if you're looking to do this as well, and how you can also get to the same position. But before we get into that whole interview, we want to learn more about you. So can you tell us your background and how you ended up here at the Department of Workforce Solutions?
Sure. So like Josh, I went to San Diego State University in the journalism program and got my degree there and started out in journalism. Worked as a reporter in San Diego and then in the Bay Area for the Bay Area News Group. Internet reporter and then newspaper reporter. Covered demographics, covered COVID, covered small businesses. and a really broad range of issues, including immigration, which we'll get to. And then had an opportunity with my partner to move out to New Mexico. And we took it and we came out here and we loved it. And I started moving more into the policy world, because in journalism, you get to see a lot of things that are happening in the world and you get to ask questions and learn about them, but you don't get to fix them or be part of the solution. And I really resonated, even though our worlds are so different. Our conversation with Josh really resonated because he got to cover baseball, but he wasn't part of the team and of the experience. And so I started moving more into the policy work. I worked for a nonprofit for the ACLU of New Mexico in immigration work, in our communications team, and then in our policy team. And then the opportunity opened up to build out the Office of New Americans here at the Department of Workforce Solutions, and to really expand our immigration workforce policy work, internal work, external work, looking at ways to really help better integrate that immigrant population into our workforce, because they're 10% of our population, but 12% of our labor force, from almost 13%. It's a huge part. I think one of the things that really drew me to the Office of New Americans, which is this national network, their vision of integration as a two-way street. It's not just how do we bring folks into work and into business, but also how do we make them be more successful in their own careers, and how do we, both as employers or as businesses, welcome those workers in and support them to achieve their goals, take advantage of their experience, their unique insight, their skills that they might have brought with them or that they've developed here. And it was such a great opportunity. I also studied economics at San Diego State, so this was just a perfect fit, I hope.
I think so. And you can really see your journalism skills coming out in this interview, because you had some really great questions and you kind of came full circle in your questions related to the work that you do here. And I love that. So listen for that. So without further ado, here's Josh. Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for being with us today on Good Job, New Mexico.
Thank you for the invitation. Pleased to be here.
For sure, there's a connection here with Leo, and he's the one that was like, who I went to school with, or went to the same college as I did.
Yeah, didn't quite overlap, but fellow San Diego State University graduate, fellow Aztec for life.
There's only a few of us Aztecs here in the land of enchantments. We have to be careful, especially when we're playing the Lobos, but yes.
That's right. It's been a rough couple seasons for us at the pit, but that's okay.
So are you originally from California?
Yeah, I grew up basically in the Bay Area, not too far from Oakland. Spent most of my life in California before coming out here. And so I feel like I grew up at a time when the media in the Bay Area was just really good. KTVU, 10 o'clock news, just like one of the most legendary local news stations. And I grew up in a family where my dad always watched the news. We got 2 newspapers at home, always. Sometimes we got 3 newspapers, multiple magazines that were delivered. We're always watching the news. So I felt like, I was absorbing the news even before I even thought about having some type of career in the media.
Were you going to school and telling the kids, did you see what happened on the news?
I kind of was, yeah. I worked, I don't know if the correct verb is worked, but I wrote for my high school newspaper. I was the editor-in-chief my senior year. When I got to San Diego State, I knew I wanted to major in journalism. I ended up being the editor-in-chief of the campus newspaper. Yeah, so I was definitely the person that people went to and Josh, what's this story? And I usually had that, even before I was a professional journalist, I kind of had the story.
Nice. Were your parents involved in anything news related or media?
No, not at all. Neither one of them had any desire to do any sort of journalism job, communications job, PR, anything like that. But they were both just really supportive. So how I got into baseball, I played baseball. It's people ask you, what are you going to do when you grow up? Oh, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. And they would go, just in case that doesn't work out, what's your backup plan? I would be like, what do you mean backup plan? And I'm like, well, you never stop talking about baseball, Josh. So maybe you could just be one of those people that talks about it. So I didn't get books like Curious George or Choose Your Own Adventure. I didn't get those kind of books. I got books about baseball. I got Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News back when those were magazines that were a big deal, delivered. I got baseball books. That's all I was given was sports, mostly baseball books. So they were very supportive, even though they had no background in it.
So no other different types of sports like basketball, football? It was baseball 100%?
No, I would say it was baseball 51%, and all the others would be a combined 49%.
Okay, so you just grew up always being in sports.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I have an older sister.
Is she the same?
No.
Okay.
She played a couple of years of baseball and she was just like, no, not
Yeah.
at all. But I had family that was, so like one side of the family was all like Raiders and A's and the other side of the family was 49ers and Giants. And so growing up in the Bay Area, you had all of these teams. And so that's all that we talked about around the holidays.
And your team is?
My team's the Isotopes.
For sure. But when you were young.
My team was all the Oakland teams, the Oakland
Okay.
A's, the Oakland Raiders. May my Oakland teams rest in peace.
And by the way, correct answer on the Isotopes. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up San Diego Padres fan. Great, very few great years for San Diego sports. And so I got to catch a couple of really, really good teams, and that really got me interested. But I, never saw sports as a career. I always thought it was just such a cool thing to watch and enjoy. And I didn't see what those avenues were for sports. I always joked that I played sports in high school, and golf is a sport that I played all 4 years. And my senior year, I won most improved because I went from being abysmal to being really bad. And that was still sort of the biggest percentage improvement on the team. And so, it was not something that I pursued. And then when I got into newspapers, I always gravitated to the sports guys and to the sports writers, sportswomen. And the Bay Area has such a richness of incredible sports writers, sports teams, sports history. And when I was working at the Bay Area News Group, where Josh, you also work, that exposure to that writing and the way that sports can be such a true line for community, the way that it really reflected what Oakland was going through, what the Bay Area was going through. And even, here in Albuquerque, I think you can see Albuquerque becoming a global city through the Isotopes, becoming such a, embracing its identity in science and still recognizing its culture, the Dukes, the mariachis. I know that there's upcoming giveaways for those. And so it's always been fascinating to me how sports is sort of the connective tissue. How has that been for you? You obviously had that connection to the Oakland teams and that history, but coming to the Isotopes, first of all, what brought you? How did you end up with the Isotopes?
It's a long story. Let me see if I can give you the Cliff Notes version. So I would say that from the time that I was about 12, I knew that I wanted to do play-by-play announcing. That was what I wanted to do. And
Did you mute the TV and do it?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Muted the TV, turned it down, had a microphone, a cassette tape, literally, practiced, went back and listened to it, hated it. Okay, let me try it again. Yes, I totally did that. As a kid, I did that in high school. I remember doing that in college. My roommates would come home and they would see me and they would just laugh and they're just like, "You're just such a loser," So that's always what I wanted to do. But these are hard jobs to get. And like, if I look back and I'm objective, I don't know if I really had the voice, if I had the self-confidence, if I just had the understanding of what it takes to put your mouth next to a microphone and be able to talk in a way that resonates with people. So I spent a lot of time writing, and I do feel like I think I talk like a writer. I know that writing helped me become a much better talker. Being able to just type a sentence, look at it on the keyboard, be able to go back and delete it, change it. I always wanted to write in a very conversational way. When I would read back my stories before sending them in, I would kind of be like this news person. And I would think like, okay, what does this sound like? And I would even want to think about, I want to put a period here, and I want to start a whole bunch of like really quick short sentences here to speed up the pace. And then I want to do like a super long paragraph with lots of commas in order to slow things down. And then I want to do a really short paragraph and then like another really long paragraph. And I would always think about how the words on a page would sound like when you're reading it. And I think one of the best compliments that I would get is I had a friend who said, I could always hear your voice when I'm reading something. And I was like, good, like that's exactly what I'm going for. So anyways, to get back to your question, I bounced around a lot. Look, I went from a minor league baseball team in upstate New York to back to the Bay Area, worked for the Oakland Tribune / Bay Area News Group for 10 years, then went to Modesto for 1 year, worked for a minor league baseball team there. Then I went to Los Angeles. I did the pre and post game show for the Dodgers. And here's the thing about working in the media is that you haven't worked in the media until you've been fired or until you've been laid off, or there's been like cuts. And I basically got the job doing the Dodgers pre and post because the Dodgers switched from one radio station to the next, and that new station wanted somebody new. And then the Dodgers switched to another different radio station. And once again, that radio station wanted somebody new. So that's how I got the job. That's how I lost the job. And then I saw that there was an opening in Albuquerque with the Isotopes, and I applied for it. And 12 years later, I'm still here.
So no other connections to New Mexico. You just saw it and went for it.
None. Zero.
And are you so happy that you're here now in New Mexico?
I mean, I needed a job badly.
Okay, that was a baited question. Like, don't you just love it here the most?
I love what I get to do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, again, if you would have asked me at age 12, what do you want to do? Like, this is what I'm doing. I go to a baseball game and I talk for 3 hours in front of a microphone about it. So yes, to answer your question, yes, like love it. Now, certainly not everyone feels the way that I do, but when you work in minor league baseball, at least for me, I want to work in the major leagues. So that's the goal. So if you're going to work in minor league baseball, being at Isotopes Park, that leads the league in attendance, gorgeous ballpark, great fans, great promotions, everything. That's the place to be. But ultimately, the goal is the major leagues.
Okay, you took us through that Cliff's Notes, which is great. But I'm still mystified on how you make that leap into what you do. I mean, what's the practice? What's the skill set that you're building? It sounds like you did it since a child, but is there anything else that helped you through college or even just watching anybody else do this that prepared you to apply to do this?
It really is practice, right? Like the only way that you can do the job is by doing the job. So then how do you get the job, right? And so when I was in college at San Diego State, I went to all of the different sporting events with headphones that I bought for myself at Radio Shack and an old-fashioned tape cassette recorder and just practice doing games. And then I had a show. I should use air quotes. I had a show on the campus radio station. It was from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Sundays.
Oh, dedication.
So I would show up about 3:45 in the morning. Sometimes I just wouldn't go to bed. Mm-hmm. And I would have these cassette tapes and I would go into the KCR campus radio station, press play. And then when I went to like a commercial break, I just pressed pause and pressed a button for the commercial. Thank goodness nobody was listening. I really, really hope that nobody was listening, but I got to say, hey, I was on the campus radio station. I did play-by-play. And I think that over the course of the season, I got better. At least I hope so. So how I got the first job, this is going to show my age. Okay. So this is 1996. The internet is just beginning. There's dial-up, right? But like very few people even have email addresses. And so I'm thinking like, okay, maybe you get to the major leagues just the way the players do. You know, you work your way through the minor leagues. And I'm like, okay, so how do you get one of those jobs in the minor leagues? So I cold called the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, and I only knew about the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes because it was the Padres single-A affiliate. And so I called up and I said, yeah, can I talk to your broadcaster? And they said, hold on. I go, wait a minute, what's his name? Like, I couldn't look up what his name was. And they said his name is Mike Curto. And I was like, okay. So they transferred me to Mike Curto. He picks up. And I basically say, hey, I'm Josh. I'm a college student. And I kind of want to do what you do. How do you do it? And he goes, okay, this is what you do. He goes, you call Baseball America and you order the directory of all of the teams. It'll have all the names and phone numbers and addresses and everything. And he goes, and you call every single team and you ask if they have an opening. And if they do, then you mail them a cassette tape of your work. And then maybe they'll hire you. And I was like, okay. So I hang up with him. I don't have the number for Baseball America. So I'm dialing, and there's no internet to like look these things up, or can't order it online. It doesn't exist yet. So I dialed directory 4011. Can I get the number for Baseball America? They're like, what city? I'm like, I don't know.
Where it's located.
Yeah, wherever Baseball America is located. So they give me some number. I call, I give my credit card. I order this directory. It arrives in the mail like 2 weeks later. And then I literally picked up this directory and I called every single minor league baseball team in the country. And I said, hi, my name's Josh. I'm a play-by-play announcer who's about to graduate from San Diego State. I'm curious if you have any openings for the season. No? Okay, thanks. Click. Next one. I called when the phone bill arrived, when it was an actual phone bill, right? This is not cell phones. When the actual phone bill arrived, I remember my roommates looked at it and they were like, oh my gosh. It was like, I want to say that it was like 120 calls that all were like 85 cents each. And like the bill was like enormous. Like I'm a broke college student. But out of those, there was 5 teams that said that they had an opening. So even like, well, what do you put on there? Like, I don't know. So I go into the journalism had like, you know, different rooms. And this is before there was CDs, I think barely existed back then. I'm recording everything on cassette tapes. And so I'm going back and I'm trying to find like the best examples of my work at San Diego State's KCR. And I put together like, here's a home run. Here's like a guy got thrown out at third. Here's another home run. Here's a strikeout. Here's a half inning. And I made copies of it and I mailed them off to 5 teams. and one of the teams was the Watertown Indians, which no longer exists, and the New York Penn League, which no longer exists. And they called me up and they said, we have something for you. I got paid $25 per day. $25 per day. I did get a free place to live, and they said, we'll give you a free place to live and all the ballpark food you can eat, and $25 per day. And so I drove across the country from San Diego to Watertown, New York, and did like 100 jobs for them. And one of them was I got to do baseball live on the radio.
That's amazing. That's
incredible.
I know. That's dedication.
Yeah. And what I love, so you've mentioned KCR, you mentioned the Daily Aztec, the student newspaper, and you know, it really seems like this is a career, and this is something that I feel about journalism as a whole, is it's almost more like a trade. It's a craft and something that, you know, is academic, and something that I really valued about San Diego State was the opportunity to have opportunities to learn and to practice and to just, you do things, and your editor and your boss is also a student, and they're also learning, and everyone is sort of figuring it out. And that's the only way to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get to the next part. That was a summer job, right? So the summer ends, and now I got nothing. So I go back home in the Bay Area to my dad's house just to try and figure out what's next. And so exact same game plan going into the next year. I literally called every single team in minor league baseball again, looking to get like the next job. Okay, so I was at rookie ball. I want to get a job at single A or at double A. And I couldn't find anything at all. And so now what? Now what are you going to do? So, well, I did all this work as a newspaper reporter. Maybe I'll start writing again. So I started writing stories for the Oakland Tribune. It went from 1 story a week to 2 stories a week to 2 stories a week, and then stay in the office and pick up the phone and take phone calls and help put together everything else. That turned into a part-time job. That turned into a full-time job. Next thing I know, I'd been there for 10 years. I'd gotten to cover, I went from covering high school sports to covering the Giants to covering the A's. And I remember thinking, okay, I like this, but I don't like the direction the newspaper's going in. My newspaper is about to merge with 2 others. Subscriptions are down. Budgets are being slashed constantly. And I'm not doing what I ultimately wanted to do. So now, like, how am I going to do this? I can't use the stuff I had from 10 years ago. If it wasn't good enough to get me a job 10 years ago, it's certainly not going to be good enough to get me a job now. So again, fortunate, but you make your own breaks. I went to the Oakland A's PR staff, Jim Young, and I said, Jim, I want to practice doing play-by-play again. I'm going to take such and such day off and not do a story for the Tribune. So do you have a spot for me? So he put me in this booth way down the left field line that didn't even have a window that opened up, but it was the only place that he had for me. And I'm like, fine, that's great. And so there was 2 games where I did what we call a mock broadcast. And I just pretended like I was live. And I did 2 different games, 9 innings. And then I went back through that, and I'm like, okay, now it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Again, I need like a couple of highlights. I need a half inning. And then once again, I just, by this point, this was 2007, you could email. So then I just started emailing every single team in the country again. And then there was an opening in Modesto, and I'll never forget. So I, the program director, I told him, I was like, hey, you know, I had applied. I'd probably send him some sort of email, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town to go see some family. If you're around, then maybe we can chat. I had no plans to see family. I just completely lied. It was just an excuse to try to get him face to face. And I didn't know if it was an interview, but in my mind, I'm going to dress like it's an interview, and I'm going to pretend like it's an interview. And so I basically showed up at the radio station and treated it like an interview, and ended up getting the job. And so that's how I got back into working for a baseball team and doing play-by-play. It was I did 2 mock broadcasts. I emailed a ton of people, and then I made up a story that I was going to be in that town so that I could talk to someone.
Made your own opportunity.
This is just like so wild to me, because I don't think you hear it very often, and I'm sure it's happening all the time, but you don't hear it very often where people have like something set in their sights and they do whatever it takes to get there. And just the motivation and drive that you have, where does that come from?
It's what I've always wanted to do. And I guess I don't take no for an answer. Like, here's the thing. I could never just sit back and go, well, I tried, but you know, no one ever called me back. Like, no, I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to make up an excuse if I have to lie to show up somewhere, and, you know, in order to try to find a way to make an opportunity for yourself.
Does your dad have all of your newspaper clippings?
No, he does not. And I don't even have mine either. I basically threw them all away. But you know what's really cool, though, is that I do have a subscription to newspapers.com, and all of the Oakland Tribune stories are on newspapers.com.
No
so
way.
I can go back and find all mine now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to make a scrapbook for even though it's online, I'm still like physical scrapbook. You gotta have it.
It's fun to go back and like and see some of them sometimes.
Yeah. Well, take us through a day as a play-by-play, because you know, your job starts at 6:40, 4:40, 12, 11, you travel, you're going all over the country. I mean, what does a normal day look like? How do you prepare for a broadcast?
And also, do you drink a lot of tea? Like, how do you get your voice ready?
I'm going to start with that one. Mostly water.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is I need to hydrate constantly throughout the day so that by the time that I go on the air, number one, I'm already hydrated. And number two, I don't want to be drinking anything during the broadcast because I only get 90-second commercial breaks. And I work solo. So I don't want to get into too much information, but you get the point, sure, right? Yeah. When I'm feeling, especially when it's cold early in the season, I might do more tea. Sometimes it'd be more coffee if I'm need a little pick me up kind of thing. So yeah, it's important to like take care of your voice, but just hydration in general, especially when you live at 5,200 feet, is super important. When it comes to preparing for a game, I wish that I could say that I made this up, but someone else said it, but I like to repeat it. It goes like this. You spend a couple days getting ready to broadcast a basketball game. You spend all week getting ready to broadcast a football game. You spend your entire life getting ready to broadcast a baseball game. Because you just never know what's going to happen. And you just like the whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to sit down at 4 o'clock and spend 2 hours getting ready for the game. That just does not exist. Like, yeah, you can sit down and prepare a certain number of things, but I believe that in order to be really, really good at baseball, it has to be all consuming. You have to be someone who just constantly is curious, wants to learn about the past, wants to learn about history. So I get to the field. I go down to the field as the guys are taking batting practice. I'm usually around the cage. I just like watching, listening, observing. I'll ask questions. I might just say to a guy like, hey, tell me about your bat. There's different questions that I'm asking guys about, like their bat, about their glove, I'm about the wind, about the sun. I'm just constantly asking people questions and observing things because you just never know when you're going to use it, when you're going to need to use it. Because for most people, baseball is this really slow sport. Some people might think that it's dull or that it's boring. I think there's constant potential things that are happening. There's constant strategy that's happening. You just have to pay attention for it. But also there is a lot of downtime. So you need to find a way to keep your audience engaged and give them some interesting things between pitches. And you want to try to just create just this fun, conversational, breezy type of thing that you're doing. And then all of a sudden something crazy happens and you need to be ready to immediately describe it without losing your mind and without getting all flustered.
For sure. I like what you used when you sent us some preliminary questions. You have to vividly describe it. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes from your practice, is being able to do that off the fly, like just doing it. Yeah. It just is built into you. So
sometimes during batting practice, I'll just sit there and mumble to myself and practice calling plays. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll do it from upstairs in the broadcast booth because I want to be able to like see the angle from up there. And I'll just see that. And again, because guys are hitting it, boom, 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 boom. And so it's just rapid fire. And I'm just like making up things. But I'm trying to make it up in a way that like, this is what's most likely to happen based on what this ball does. And sometimes I'll do it from on the field, behind the cage. To me, a really important thing is just being able to judge a fly ball or a line drive or the speed of a ground ball so that you can prepare yourself mentally for what might happen. And then you're ready to make adjustments. Because if you go into this, oh, it's hit way back, and then like it's not, then you sound like a dummy. So being able to recognize those types of things is really important to me. And I think it's fun. Like I practice sometimes the most ridiculous plays where they're throwing it all over the place and guys are getting up and falling down and running frontwards and backwards. And I feel like if I practice the most absurd thing that'll never happen in a game, then if something, say 60% of that happens, then I'm ready for it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you have monitors or do you just have the best eyesight ever?
I have a monitor, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's my cheat sheet. Yes. Okay, yeah, there is a monitor, yeah.
I'd be like, I think out there in the center field is.
Yeah, there actually is a fine line between, I like to look at the monitor between pitches. And then as the pitch is being delivered, I usually watch it with my own two eyes. And then based on where it goes, sometimes I go to the monitor if it's hit like way out there or if it's in like a corner or I can't see it as well. But I do have it right next to me so that my eyes can go back and forth, whichever one is seeing it better.
What is the prep for their last names? And have you ever had a last name that was really hard to say?
Oh, yeah. Arizbel Arua Barrena.
There it is.
Just practice a lot. Yeah. You just practice. I mean, the most important thing is you just go up to guys and say, explain this to me, like say your name. And sometimes I'll just check out my phone with the voice note and say your name, say it again, say it a third time, say it slowly, please, say it fast, and then just practice.
So I think one of the most important things for any baseball announcer is their home run call.
Yeah. Right.
So can you tell us, first of all, can you give us your home run call? And then can you talk us through how you develop? Because, some guys have like one go-to, some people kind of switch it up, and then they have like certain approaches that they have. You know, the Yankees announcers have been famous for this, right? Having unique ones based on the different last names and Stantonian or whatever it may be. So talk us through kind of how you thought through how you were going to do your home runs as you were kind of starting out in your career.
Yeah, so I think for most people, you end up emulating the people you listened to when you were a kid, whether you realize it or not.
Right.
So I grew up listening on the A's to Bill King and Lon Simmons, and on the Giants, Hank Greenwald, and then later I listened to Ted Robinson and John Miller and Ken Korak. And out of those, there's only one who had a definitive home run call, and that was Lon Simmons. And because most of them did not have home run calls, and then the great Vin Scully famously did not have a home run call. And I remember Hank Greenwald once said, I don't want to have a home run call because every home run is different. So my call should be a little bit different for each home run call. So I never had this idea of like, oh, I'm going to have a home run call. You work in Albuquerque, there's a lot of home runs that get hit. And you start to think, well, maybe I should have a home run call. And I always just felt like I was just waiting for something organically to happen. Right. But the thing about home run calls is it's really easy to get caught where you start to go into your home run call. And then if you're wrong, then you just look like a total dummy. Right. So I think you also need to be careful of a guy hits a game winning home run. That's different than a guy who hits a home run in the 5th inning when he's down 9-2. So you need to kind of save it. So to answer your question, Lon Simmons, his home run call was, you can tell it goodbye. And when Lon passed away, I remember it as a tribute to him. The first game after he passed away, I thought, okay, the first time the Isotopes hit a home run, I'm going to say, you can tell it goodbye. And I did, but I forgot. And then like halfway I kind of did, and it wasn't very good. And I thought, well, that was just a terrible tribute. It was just awful. Sorry, Lon, may you rest in peace. I was like, okay, well, I need to like do it properly. And so I waited for like some other time where it was long gone. You could totally tell it was going to be gone. So I could like really get into it. And then I kind of liked the sound of it. And then a couple of people said, hey, I like that. So here's the other thing about home run calls too. There's very few of them that are unique because all the good ones are taken. So you're either just ripping off somebody or you're just doing something over the top that's kind of dumb, right? But I thought, okay, so if I lived in the Bay Area and I said, you can tell it goodbye, then people are going to know, oh, he's just ripping off Lon Simmons. But very few people in New Mexico know who Lon Simmons is. So I could totally rip him off and no one's going to know that I'm ripping him off. They just think it's unique. The other thing I like about you can tell it goodbye is that you can change it based on what word you emphasize. You can say, you can tell it goodbye. You can say, you can tell it goodbye. You can say, you can tell it goodbye. Or you can say, you can tell it goodbye. Like you can change the tone based on what words you emphasize. And I don't have the most deepest, most amazing baritone voice. And so what I've learned is that in order to compensate, I need to take these strategic pauses, because if I don't, then my voice gets really up here and it sounds like I'm 16 years old and I'm going through puberty. And so being able to say, you can, quick pause, tell it, quick pause, goodbye, it slows me down. I'm able to get more oxygen into my lungs so that I can make up for the fact that I don't have a great voice. So I try to save it for a really big moment. Someone's first home run at AAA, go ahead home run. Sam Hilliard breaks the all-time Isotopes home run record. I got to say, you can tell it goodbye, right? So you want to save it for like these big moments and then just say something basic when it's just a ho-hum home run.
Yeah, like you said, there's only so many variations, and to have something that can bring in, because I think something that I really, I think you do this at some of the, I'm a big fan of Jesse Angler for the Padres. Something that the great announcers do is you really can feel what the home run felt like based on the delivery of the call. You can tell if it was a line drive that snuck out and just, it's such a, it's a dagger, or it's one that you just, from the moment it hit the bat, you knew it was going to be gone, and how you can modify that to kind of convey the different emotions and presentations.
Yeah. And then letting the crowd tell the story too. So I work solo, and I'm a big believer that my partner is the crowd, right? So let the crowd tell the story. Now, sometimes, we get rained out, and so we're starting the next day at 4:00 in the afternoon, and there's only 10 people in the stands, and so you don't have much of a partner. But and so, but sometimes it's a mariachi game, and there's 15,000 people, and they're singing and they're dancing and they're going nuts, and so you let the crowd tell part of the story.
Well, and that's what you come into, because I think as baseball watchers in the crowd, sometimes we call early, like you were saying, we call the home run a little early and the celebration starts, and then it's a long fly ball out. And so that's where you come in.
That's where, again, this goes back to what you do before the game. And a lot of it is you don't describe what the baseball is doing. You describe what the people are doing. So if you're trying to describe what the baseball is doing, like it's up there, it's high, it's going, it's traveling, it's high, it's sink, like you just can't describe it. But if you describe what the player is doing, then you can describe the outfielder. You can say that Johnson is going back. He's at the track. He's at the wall. He leaps. You can tell it goodbye or it's gone, And so this way it just gives a more vivid description of what's going on other than just it's still going. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you by yourself in the booth?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get lonely?
That's a good question.
Or is it like there's so much going on?
I've worked with partners before, and honestly, it feels like a half day. It feels so easy. It feels so simple. But actually, those are the days where you really have to focus on, I need to be a good partner here. I need to make sure that I let this person who's next to me get words in and give space and set this person up in order to shine. I feel like it's like being a point guard on a basketball team or the quarterback on a football team, that you really need to think not just of yourself and be able to think of others. I work solo because minor league baseball doesn't have big budgets, right? We can't afford to have multiple announcers, right? We're only going to pay for one person. So I'm used to it. Occasionally, there's been times that I've worked with an analyst, mostly in other sports, and it's super fun because, again, it feels like a half day. You're like, all right, cool, you go.
Yeah. Leo, you go.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I don't know enough about baseball, which brings me to the point of like you have to constantly be up to date on the rules that are probably changing every season.
Yeah.
So it's like a constant study. It's like you're a doctor because you're constantly in study mode. Right?
But again, you have to like it and you have to want to know it. Right. And like, these are things that I just, I also look at it like it's my job to know these things. Like it's truly, literally my job to be able to explain to people, okay, there's this new rule. The rule is that you have to throw the ball within 15 seconds after you get it back from the catcher, unless there's somebody on base, then you have 18 seconds to throw the ball. Or if you want to, you can step your foot off the rubber and that resets the clock, but you can only do that twice per at bat. Right. So there's like these different rules and it's literally my job to know these things. And so I get the memos that Major League Baseball sends off and I study them and I try to like memorize them and ask questions of other people. Like, is this your interpretation of the rule? Is this my understanding of the rule? So that I can explain to people. Again, it's literally my job to know these things. So it'd be really weird if I didn't.
And now you mentioned Jordan Beck. Something that I think is so interesting and such a unique opportunity about AAA is that you're seeing these rising prospects with a lot of promise and making their way up to the majors. You have maybe guys who are on the tail end of their career and are giving it one last go and are, kind of hanging around the major, or are down because they're injured and they're trying to get back into condition to get back into the majors. And how do you handle, as someone who's going out, talking to them, learning their names, learning who they are, knowing that fans are going to have, if Veen hits a home run, well, that means something as a top prospect. Well, that's really exciting for the team, but it's also really exciting because if you're a Rockies fan, what does that mean for when he hopefully, well, now he's with the major league team, but how do you handle having this constantly shifting cast of characters? Because ultimately you're telling a story and the characters are the players and they are sort of building the story as you go and you're the narrator and they're changing and they have all this background and unique opportunities and different times in their life.
So I think that's what makes AAA baseball so interesting is there's just so many different stories that are happening. And honestly, I think this goes back to my journalism background. I really do try to think of it in journalism terms, right? I know that what I'm doing is not like real hardcore journalism, right? This isn't Woodward and Bernstein. This isn't the Pentagon Papers, but I always try to think of what is the most important thing that is happening right now. And like you said, there's up and coming prospects. There's players who are, sometimes they're just called like roster fillers and all of a sudden they have an opportunity to make the major leagues. You have guys who were in the majors who are coming back. There's guys who are injured. And honestly, it's my job to understand who these guys are, where they are in their careers, talking to them to get a sense of like what their mindset is, whether they're happy, whether they're sad, whether they're focused, whether they're pouting, and be able to explain why does this matter? I feel like even when the game is 10-1 and it's basically a blowout, the game might be over, but the storylines are never over. The guy who comes onto the mound, he didn't give up any of those 10 runs. So it's like a 0-0 game for him, right? It doesn't matter that it's 10-1. His team might be losing, but it's his job to pitch a scoreless inning so that he can impress people so he can go to the major leagues. You might be down 10-1, but this guy's at the plate and it's his job to get a hit, right? At the end of the day, it's like, what are your numbers? What numbers did you put up? So there's always a storyline, even if the story of the game is that it was a blowout. And so again, to me, that goes back to journalism. And I think like, what is the journalistic thing that is happening at every moment in this game? And I try to keep that in mind at all times.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such there's the drama is so far beyond just the scoreboard, right? It infuses the lineup, the players, each inning, there's something happening that is.
And that's where it comes to the research too, right? It says our roster changes all the time, right? People are like, how's the team look? And I'm like, well, the team today is different than it was 2 weeks ago because all of our best players just got called up to the major leagues. And 2 weeks from now, our team might be totally different too. So it's just constantly changing. And then it's, a lot of times I feel like someone new arrives and I'm like the welcoming committee. Hi, welcome to the Isotopes, right? I'm Josh. I'm the radio guy. Your parents are going to be listening to me. Hope they like my voice, right? And just sort of like welcome them and like immediately try to get to know them. We, at the time that we're recording this, we were just in Reno, Nevada, and we had a couple of new players that joined the team. And I went out of my way to make them my pregame interview because I wanted to learn about the new guys immediately, find out, like I can research stuff on the internet about like, oh, this guy's dad played minor league baseball back in the late 70s, early 80s. But what does that really mean? So I asked him questions about, at what point did you realize that my dad knows a little bit more about baseball than most people's dads, right? Like, okay, my dad kind of like, I should probably listen to that, right? So asking questions like that and learning different things from them, from these pregame interviews, from the casual conversations around the batting cage so that I can use those on the air, but also so that if, say, Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal comes out and he's like, hey, Josh, do you have an idea for a story? And maybe I would say, hey, so we got these 2 new pitchers. His name is Connor Van Scoy, and the other is Brendan Hardy. And both of them just joined us. Both of them, their dads played minor league baseball. Both of them were coached by their dad. Maybe I wanted to do a story on one. Maybe I want to do like a story on both of them. So then it turns into like a media relations job where I'm like, hey, I got an idea for you, Jeff. And then maybe Jeff thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to interview these guys and find out more details. And now that story's in the Albuquerque Journal. And now everybody else learns more about these guys as well.
Right. And this is where, so my official position here at the Department of Workforce Solutions is I'm the director of the Office of New Americans, which is our immigration policy space. And something that I think is fascinating about baseball is that it is a global sports now. And you're bringing in prospects and players from the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, from Venezuela, Japan, Korea, Mexico. And so how has your job changed, or has it changed? Or how do you approach that when you're not only is your cast of characters constantly changing, but where they're from can be so dramatically different?
Yeah, again, I try to be part of the welcoming committee. I'm very good at saying, hablo un poquito español, with a smile. And then basically asking them right away, are you comfortable with interviews in English or Spanish only? Figuring out who would be someone that would be a good translator, whether that's our manager, Pedro Lopez, who's bilingual, whether it's a player on the team that would be willing to do that, is kind of understanding who's comfortable doing English interviews and who's not. I've also gone to players before and said, hey, we can practice. I said, I won't put this on the radio. We can practice this interview so that you can get better. And I tell this of the English guys too. I said, look, your job's not to be a media star. Your job is to play baseball. But I just want you to be comfortable doing interviews so that when you do get up to the major leagues, it's not the first time that you've done an interview, so that you're not uncomfortable, you're not awkward about it. And especially with the Spanish speaking players, I want them to be able to understand that, okay, this is the types of information that I'm getting. I'll never forget Herman Marquez. He's one of the Rockies' best pitchers. He was with us. And I said, would you like to do the interview in English or Spanish? And he said he wanted to practice in English. And I was like, okay. And so I even this is not something they teach you in journalism class when you're interviewing like the president or somebody, but we're working for a minor league baseball team. And so I shared with him the questions and the topics that I was probably going to ask him. And he said, ask me the question slowly. And I said, okay, very fair. Let me make sure that I slowly, when I think about when I'm learning Spanish and how often my brain is trying to translate what that word is. And by the time that I translate that word, I've missed the next 3 or 4 words. I'm like, okay, I can understand this. I'm going to talk very slowly for him. And I said, and if you're not comfortable with the interview, we don't have to use it, or we can do it a second time or a third time, right? I want to be empathetic and helpful. And so my first question, I thought, okay, let me just start with just like the basics. And so I said, tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad, tell me about your family. And he starts talking about like the impact they had on his life. And he literally starts crying. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm starting to get like misty, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the first question. And he's crying about like what his parents meant to him and the sacrifices that they made and what he does to try to send equipment back, money back to Venezuela in order to help them and give them a better life. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. But this is also like so just real and authentic about about Herman. And I will always think of that whenever I see him pitching, striking people out, going to all-star games. I will always just think about the guy who was just so proud of his parents. And he started crying in this interview. And I remember when we finished and I said, "Are you okay with this?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he asked for a copy of it because he wanted to send it to his parents so that they could learn, so they could see that he's learning English and that he's getting better with his English. And I was like, this is so cool. This is more than baseball.
Yeah, that's life. That's what it's all about.
Talking about life, can you talk a little bit about your work-life balance for this particular field of?
So I don't know how many people will agree with me about this. Look, I think that work-life balance is really important. If you want to have a really good work-life balance, I encourage people to do so. Do not work in sports if you want to have a work-life balance. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen. If that's really important to you, that's awesome. Then do it, but don't work in sports because you're going to work nights, you're going to work weekends, you're going to work holidays, you're going to work more than 12 hours. Sometimes you're going to work 15 hours. It's just life working in sports. And I think that the Isotopes do a really good job in the off season of allowing people to get lots of time off. And even when the team goes on the road, most people on our staff get one day off. Instead of working 5 days a week, they'll work 4 days a week, and then they'll have the weekends off unless they have to work the United games. So we get a bunch of time off in the off season. And so when you add up the quantity of hours that we have, it's way more than the average worker. The quantity of days ends up being somewhat close because of the days that we get off in the off season. But for 6 months, from basically April 1st until September 30th, there's not much of a work-life balance. Like my schedule is the team's schedule. And especially because I travel with the team. Like yesterday, we left the Reno hotel. I think the bus left at 5:30 in the morning. And so we had been in Reno for 7 days. Bus left at whatever time that was, 5:30. Flight from Reno to Long Beach, layover in Long Beach to Albuquerque, get back home. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had the rest of the day free. But that was my off day, right? And so then, okay, now we got a 6-game homestand, and then the same thing's going to happen next Monday is we're going to travel to Oklahoma City, and then the following Monday, the off day is once again going to be traveling back home. So it is important that you find this time to get away from baseball, whatever the sport is that you might be working, and be able to reset and let your brain relax and spend time with people who don't work in sports and be able to just give yourself a breather. But you're never going to have a 50-50 balance. You're never going to come close to a 50-50 balance working in sports.
So I'm going to ask the same question that you asked when you were starting out, which is if someone was, if there's a kid today who is in college or in high school who's thinking about, I want to go into baseball broadcast, what would you recommend that they do now?
You just do it. There's so many ways that you can practice. You can, as your friends are playing video games, you can be the announcer. You can go on YouTube and look at old games and turn down the volume, and you can do it. You can watch a live game and you can turn down the volume and do it. You can come to Isotopes Park and sit in the last row and just mumble to yourself. You can bring a microphone and practice into your microphone. You can go to a high school game and do it way down the line. If you don't want to be around other people, you can go to a pickup game. No matter what the sport is, there is always a way that you can practice it. The only way that you're going to get better is just to do it over and over and over again. Like I can tell you, like fundamentally, these are the things you should think about, and this is how you prepare, but it's not going to do you any good. You literally just have to do it over and over and over again. There's a lot of similarities between playing sports. You can read a book all you want about like how to hit a baseball or how to throw a baseball. You just have to do it, and you just have to just do it over and over and over again. And most importantly, you have to understand that the first time you do it, you are going to be horrendous. You are going to be so incredibly horrendous that you're going to want to give up. And if anybody hears you, maybe they'll be nice and say, way to go, way to try. Or they're going to say, no, you were terrible. So do it again the next day, and you're going to be 1% less terrible. And then you're going to be 1% less terrible. And then you're going to get to a certain point and you're going to go, all right, I think I'm pretty good. And you're not going to be very good, but you're going to think that you're going to be pretty good. And if you ever do get to do it for a long time, you'll look back 10 years after you started and you're going to go, man, I thought I was pretty good there and I wasn't. Right? You just keep doing it.
I think that's great advice for any job, honestly. Is like we have our highs and our lows with what we do and what we've done in the past. And then, yeah, I have the same thing in my career where it's like, I thought I was killing it at one point. And then now I'm like, oh, no. I look back at what I was doing, I'm like, that was not good. But in the moment, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever made. So, yeah, I think that's amazing advice.
But something that I love and something that I want to ask you about, because I feel like it's something that, in my career and I want to see if in your career of experience, you talk about, so the reason that he was able to get the in the park home run is because the fielder dove for the ball, and the ball had, as you described, caught a seam, as they say. It kind of at the last minute just cut away from him, and he thought he was going to catch it, and he didn't, and it rolled away, and it was a bit of a disaster for the Twins, I think it's fair to say. And you know how it's such a perfect description of something that happens where you think that you're on that certain track, you're going to accomplish something in your career, and then things just shift out of your control for a moment. And I'm curious if you've had those moments in your career where you felt like, you know, you caught a seam and
constantly
the rug was pulled out from under you. And how do you handle that?
Constantly. Feel like every time you apply for a job and you don't get it, it's that way. So what I say is I give myself 24 hours to feel sorry for myself. And then I go, okay, what's next? I literally have in the notes section of my phone, that literally the headline says, what's next? And then I just like write down ideas. Okay, like what's next? Okay. You didn't get the job. What's next? Yeah, I told you about the job with the Dodgers. I got the job because the Dodgers switched radio stations. I lost the job for the exact same reason. Like, okay, what's next? It took me a long time to figure out what was next, right? You know, you just have to just keep going, right? Here's the other thing about working in sports media. So many people want to do it. So many people want to do it. It's so competitive and people are so good at it. So how are you going to stand out? How are you going to make yourself look different than anybody else to show that they should hire you? When I applied for the job with the Isotopes, John Schraub, as our general manager, he told me that over 200 people applied for the job. Over 200 people. So I don't know if he flipped a coin or like how I got it, but I got the job. Okay,
I was going to say that's one of the interview questions you do is like, what did I do that made me stand out the most?
Yeah.
Right? I'm surprised you didn't ask him.
So he has since told me, which wasn't the most flattering thing. One of the things he actually did tell me is that it was really close to the start of the season. And he didn't want to hire somebody who already had a job in baseball because then that team would have to scramble to find somebody. So what helped me is that I was unemployed. That's one of the main reasons why I got the job, is because I was unemployed. So he didn't want to put somebody else in a bad position. Then the other thing that helped me too is that at the time, the Isotopes were the Dodgers affiliate. And some people from Los Angeles who respected my work, I asked them if they would be comfortable contacting the Isotopes and recommending me. And I later found out that multiple people did and that it really meant a lot. Ned Coletti was the general manager of the Dodgers at the time, and Ned actually called John Schraub. I didn't know this until like long time afterward. And John said, I've never in my life, he said, I've hired a lot of broadcasters. I've never had the general manager of a Major League Baseball team call to recommend a broadcaster. So I felt like I better listen to him.
Okay, I'm going to pivot us into some rapid, not so rapid questions. Okay. What's your favorite ballpark?
Isotopes Park.
Great. Good. Correct.
That was easy.
Can I ask, what's your favorite? I mean, because Isotopes Park, fantastic view of the mountains, especially. I mean, if anyone listening can catch a sunset game, I mean, I don't think there's a better way to spend an evening in the country. Non-Albuquerque category.
I really do like the Giants ballpark in San Francisco. It's right on the water. It's on the bay. Like the views are just stunning. It's so just picturesque. I think it's called Oracle Park or Oracle Field now, but yeah, whatever it's called, the one in San Francisco for the Giants is really special.
It's a great one.
Okay. Your biggest fear or phobia?
The biggest fear is just screwing up a call, right? And then the phobia would be, I would say at least once a month, I have some type of nightmare that I'm either locked in a bathroom or I'm locked out of the broadcast booth and I cannot get in. That it's 90 seconds between innings and I get locked inside some door and I'm like pounding on the door, trying to get out, or I'm trying to like get into like this broadcast booth and it's locked and people are like, why is Josh not talking? Where is he? How come he's not on the air and I can't get in? Like, so that's my biggest phobia, was just that I have that at least once a month.
That's a legitimate phobia.
Mm-hmm.
What's yours?
I don't know. Now probably just heights or spiders. Yeah. Do you ever think about that? You know, because I think at Isotopes Park they also do this, that they play the broadcast in the restroom for people. Yeah. Do you ever think about that? Some of your audience.
Oh yeah. I'll even say hello to them sometimes too. I'm like, hi. For those of you doing your business, hi, I'm Josh. When you get finished doing your business, head over to section 115. We've got, go check out the artwork from the Jackie Robinson mural that we put on.
That's great. I'm gonna ask because I have a favorite, but there's a between inning games One is the race around the bases. So we have our taco salsa, red, green chilies, and the taco. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a rooting interest
in
the race?
Do you always go for salsa?
Well, so everyone likes taco. Taco gets the most fans, so I can't be a fan of taco because taco already has enough.
Well, we're both salsa.
Okay. I'm more like green chili.
Okay. Can you describe your job using only emojis?
Microphone. Giggly face. Confused face. Head exploding.
Perfect.
Favorite ballpark food?
Ballpark food. Okay, fun fact. I have not eaten a hot dog since 2000.
What?
First time I went to Dodger Stadium, I heard all about like the famous Dodger dogs, and I couldn't wait to have one. I thought it was disgusting. And I've not had a hot dog since. That was 2000. So here's the other thing. Remember, I got to talk on the air, and I don't work with a partner. So I want the blandest food that is not going to upset my stomach. If I'm at the game as a fan, then that's different. But I just want the most basic, bland thing that is not going to upset my stomach.
You know, I'm the same way because I went to a Dodger game 2 years ago for the first time, and I got excited for the Dodger dog, and I was very disappointed. It was very expensive, and I was like, I expected more. It's way better here, Isotopes.
You should take a sort of a Buzzman's holiday because the Isotopes Park has some fantastic food now.
Yeah, and I get to try it before the start of the season. Chef Jim is great. He always comes up with these great concoctions, and we do a media day. You guys need to come next year when we do it. And, you know, so I get to try all of them, and I'm like, okay, this is really good, but also I do not want to eat this before going on the air for 3 hours.
For sure. Did you try the cotton candy burger?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was so good. Yeah, it was so good.
My husband had the opposite reaction.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was like, absolutely not. Okay, last question is just red or green?
It's mostly Christmas. It really does depend, right? Like if it's a bagel, I need green chili on my bagel and on my pizza. But if it's like a breakfast burrito, I need Christmas.
Did you have to work up your tolerance when you moved here?
Oh, seriously, yeah.
Okay.
It took at least a couple years.
Okay. I've lived here my whole life. I'm just starting.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a while too. And then you got to learn like, okay, sometimes it's more of like a chili peppery, and then sometimes it's more like a salsa. And so I know I spent a lot of time asking for it on the side so that I could see just how hot it was and I could put it on myself in the right increments. But now I'm like, whatever, let's go.
Thank you so much, Josh, for being with us today and sharing your story and being an inspiration to others that want to follow on the same path and just giving the motivation to just keep on going.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
This has been a New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions production. Our producer is Milo Koleski. This episode was engineered and mixed by John Sloan. Theme music is One Fine Day, courtesy of podcast.co. Follow the show on social media at GoodJobNM. For program funding, visit our website, dws.state.nm.us/funding. Bye.